Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Brother William, who is a Catholic Christian and watches my videos and always makes good comments, made a comment that is very interesting. In fact, I was planning to make a video about this topic anyway, but he preempted me with his comment. So let's read his comment together. I think we all will learn a lot from it. Says one other thought, if the Jews of Moses' time were to make a Hajj to Petra, how could they get there in only 3 days? Not to mention making the Hajj and then returning to Egypt. For instance, Exodus 8 reads, talking to Pharaoh, and this is where I am right now, we will go 3 days journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God as he has commanded us. Then he goes on saying, so wouldn't this statement by Moses and the Israelites be impossible to be made at Petra, unless this was deception on the part of Moses? That is, he was never planning on honoring his 3-day sacrifice plan, but rather to make a permanent escape for all his people. So this is an important topic. You can actually Google this. There has been a lot of discussions about this verse. In fact, there are actually 2 verses in the book of Exodus. I have told you before, where whenever something is really important, Allah gives us at least 3 witnesses. 2 witnesses. And sometimes 3 and sometimes 4. Because he wants to make sure that we understand, and he wants to make sure nobody changes it, okay? So this is important. This topic of 3-day is important. But what is it talking about? Is it really Moses? Is it really the reason is that Moses was trying to deceive Pharaoh, or is there something else? If you look at a lot of conversation, a lot of discussions that has happened during the past several centuries, it's not only in our day and age. There's lots of commentaries from a long time ago, and all of them have tried to decipher that 3-day journey to the wilderness. And unfortunately, all of them have been unsuccessful in understanding that. So let's take a look at the verse, and I'm going to tell you why they have been unsuccessful in realizing the truth of these 2 verses. So this is the verse. This is from, I believe, NIV. It says, then you and the elders are to go. So I'm reading here. You and the elders are to go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness. And I'm going to highlight this for you. 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God, but I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go. So I'm just going to end over there for the sake of time. So there are 2 verses in the Torah that talk about that. That's verse number 18 of chapter 3 of the book of Exodus, and verse number 27 of chapter 8 of the book of Exodus. And both of them say the exact same thing. But as I mentioned, most Christian scholars, Jewish scholars, they have come to this conclusion that this was probably a deception, and Moses was trying to deceive Pharaoh. So before we go into dissecting these 2 verses that Allah has shared with us in Torah, let's just answer a couple of questions together. The first question is, was Moses a deceptive individual? What is the answer to this? If you know the Torah, if you know the Quran, you know that that's not true. In fact, Moses was qawiyun amin. It means strong and extremely trustworthy. And that's exactly why Jethro or Shuaib not only hired him, but allowed him to marry his daughter. So I just want you to keep that in mind. So that's not true. Now, how could Moses, who is trustworthy, deceiving Pharaoh? So Moses tells Pharaoh that I'm a trustworthy messenger. I have a message for you. Moses tries to teach Pharaoh and help him believe in Yahweh, our Creator, our God. So Moses is not a deceptive individual. In fact, it's Pharaoh that is constantly deceiving, because Moses goes to him and tells him that Allah will take the punishment away if you do that. And Pharaoh says that, sure, I'm going to believe. Tell your God to remove the punishment, and right after that, we are going to believe. And as soon as Allah or Yahweh or the gracious, all good names belong to him. As soon as our Creator removed the punishment, Pharaoh would break his promise. So Pharaoh was a very deceptive individual, but Moses was very straightforward, to the point, and trustworthy. The second question that we are going to answer is that what was Moses' position before being appointed by Allah as his messenger? So we have 3 videos. Please watch those, Israelites and the Hajj, and I explained it very clearly that Moses was the organizer of pilgrimage and Hajj for 8 to 10 years. He basically tenured in organizing Hajj. What that means is logistics, the path, where the caravans go, how people travel to it. So he knew the geography really well. That was his position for 10 years. To organize Hajj events for the pilgrims from all across that region. So please watch those videos. So Moses knew what he was talking about, knew the times, knew the path, knew everything there was to know about Hajj at that time. So the third question is, was Mecca, Kadesh, or Petra an unknown place? No, absolutely not. Remember, the world was much smaller than it is right now. There was no America. Europe, as we know, didn't exist. South America didn't exist. Australia didn't exist. So it was a very small place, and people knew each other. And Pharaoh knew where Kadesh or Petra was, because they're very close to each other. We're not talking about at the other side of the continent. They're neighboring places. And Pharaoh was a king of Egypt. Kings usually have intelligence services. They're very well informed when it comes to geography. That's what a king does. That's their job. That's their position. So, and Mecca, Kadesh, Petra was not unknown. As I mentioned, many of the people in that region would perform pilgrimage to it. The fourth question, was Pharaoh an ignorant king? Again, he was not. In fact, he was very shrewd. He was deceptive. He was very knowledgeable. He was a dictator, and he considered himself God. It means that he was obviously very knowledgeable. He was very well informed, educated, very smart person. But he was just not a good individual. So now that we know that, I think it's safe for us, for all of us, to rule out the possibility that Moses was deceiving Pharaoh, and that Pharaoh was ignorant enough to be even deceived by Moses. So that's just completely out of the question. So with that in the back of our mind, let's dig deeper in those 2 verses and see what it is that those 2 verses are actually telling us. Okay, so this is verses 3:18 and 8:27 of the book of Exodus. They both say the exact same thing. Let's start with 8:27. In Hebrew, it says derech sheloshet yamim. What does that mean? It means sheloshet yamim salasat ayam. The exact word in Arabic for it is salasat ayam. So we know 3 days. That's not a problem. That's very easy to understand. 3 days. The other one, the other verse, again says the exact same thing here. Sheloshet yamim. So 3 days, that's very easy to understand. So what has caused all these problems that we are facing is the word derech. It's pronounced derech. So they have translated the word derech as journey. It means a 3-day journey. So what is the translation of this? Let me write it for you. So basically the Hebrew is derech sheloshet, which sheloshet means in Arabic means thalatha. Yamim in Arabic they say ayyam, but it's the same root, yam. The root of it is the exact same root, yam. Basically thalathata ayyam, and derech is the word that they have translated as journey. Basically a 3-day journey. But My point is, and what I want to impress upon you, is that derech doesn't always mean journey. So let's look at other verses and you're going to see what the actual meaning of derech is. So let's look at book of Genesis together, 31-35. It says, and she said to her father, let it not displease you, my lord, that I cannot rise up before you. Why? For the custom of women is upon me. So basically she's having her monthly event. Because of that, she's like, I cannot rise up in front of you because the custom of women. So the way it's used here, derech means custom, something that happens regularly. So this is regularly, on a monthly basis, on an annual basis, something that happens. Is a practice. It's a custom. It's a practice, kind of like a tradition, something that is happening on a regular basis. So that's derech. So it's a process. You could say a process as well. So that's derech, right? Of course, it does mean the journey as well, but I want you to see that it has actually a very specific meaning, and that's what it means over there. So, and then you look at the book of Jeremiah 20-21. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go over the whole thing, but it says, I spoke unto thee in thy prosperity, but thou saidest, I will not hear. This has been thy manner from thy youth. So basically, it's here, thy manner. And again, the word used, I want to show it is, it says, darkech. It means the same, derech is darkech. It's your basically derech. And again, here you can see ki derech. I just want you to know it's the exact same word that is being used here. It was used as custom here. I'm just going to highlight it for you. And here, so basically, what does this mean? This means this has been your thy manner. This has been thy practice. What does it mean? It means it's something that you regularly do. It's something that keeps happening. This is your custom. This is your practice. This is your tradition. This is your process, right? So I just want to impress upon you that derech, journey, is not the only meaning of that word. There is another meaning that I just showed to you and proved to you from the Bible. But the translator of the Bible over there are translating that word wrong. And it happens a lot because there has been 3,500 years has passed. A lot of these words, the meanings have changed. So otherwise, that's why a lot of these things we don't understand in the Bible. It's difficult because the meaning of some of these words have changed. And some of them, the translators don't even know what the meaning is anymore. So hopefully this is easy for you to see that it means custom, practice, tradition, process. Now let's go back and read those verses together. So now that we know the other meaning of derech, we should be able to translate this better. Derech sheloshet yamim. What does that mean? A 3-day custom or practice. A 3-day custom or practice. A 3-day tradition. A 3-day process. Now let's look at the actual meaning of that verse the way it should be. So I'm going to start reading from here. It says, then you and the elders are to go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, Yahweh, the Elohim of the Hebrews, has met with us. Let us leave for a 3-day custom practice in the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. The other verse is the exact same. 3-day practice, a 3-day custom. So what is it talking about? What is this, a 3-day practice? What is this, a 3-day practice? Remember, in this verse, in the Torah, Allah is not talking about the journey. It's talking about the Hajj. Allah is saying to us, Allah is teaching us, Allah is teaching the true believers at the time of Moses, who were the Israelites, Remember, Christianity is not there, Islam is not there, Torah has not been revealed, right? Allah is teaching them, putting that in the Torah, so they all know that the Hajj is what? A 3-day custom and practice. I made a video, I will put the link down there in the description, and I showed to you from the Quran the number of days in Hajj. What are the numbers of days in Hajj? 3 days. Quran tells us as well. So Torah tells us the exact same thing, that Hajj and pilgrimage is a 3-day custom, it's a 3-day practice. Something that is done in 3 days. He's not saying that for us going to Petra, going to Kadesh takes 3 days. He says, no, he says, let us go to the wilderness. Which wilderness? Wilderness of Zin, where Kadesh is, so that we perform Hajj, and that Hajj, that whole process of Hajj takes 3 days, not the journey. To get out of Egypt with families and with kids, and just to go probably like 10 miles will take more than 3 days or something close to it at least. This 3 days is to the number of days in Hajj. So basically Allah is teaching us in the Torah that Hajj is a 3-day process. Let's look at it in the Quran. I want to share those verses again. I know I have talked about it before, but I want to show that to you again as well. One more time. So this is verse number 196 of chapter 2. So basically, I'm not going to go over through all this verse. I have a video about it. But if you want to watch that, I will put the link in description. It's like a 30-minute video. I go over it. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to very quickly cover this here. It says, if you couldn't find a sacrifice, and I apologize, hadi means gift, doesn't mean sacrifice. But it was back then, in that day and age, they would, usually it would be a sacrificial animal. But hadi means gift. It says, فَمَنْ لَمْ يَجِدْ, if you couldn't offer a gift, فَثِيَامُ, then you have to fast ثَلَاثَةَ أَيَّامٍ. Does it? I told you, but sheloshet yamim. In Hebrew is sheloshet yamim. In Arabic is ثَلَاثَةَ أَيَّامٍ. ثَلَاثَةَ أَيَّامٍ fil Hajj. Then you have to fast for 3 days in pilgrimage. And وَسَبْعَةٍ إِذَا رَجَعْتُمْ. And 7 days when you return. So Allah in this verse is telling us what? That Hajj is or pilgrimage is a 3-day process or a 3-day custom. So when you go to Al-Quds, Kadesh, the holy sanctuary, what we know today as Petra, to visit the house of Allah, to be Allah's guest, Allah wants you to be there. How many days? ثَلَاثَةِ أَيَّامٍ or sheloshet yamim, 3 days. Because Hajj is a 3-day custom or practice. But again, Allah, even in the Quran, Allah gives us 2 witnesses. This was the first witness. Let's look at the second witness together. Verse number 203 of chapter 2. Again, I have a video on this. I'm going to do it very quickly. It's talking about Hajj. Then it says, وَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ فِي أَيَّامٍ مَعْدُودَةٍ. Remember Allah during the specified number of days. What are these numbers? These are, we just talked about it. This is those 3 days of Hajj. Not only in the Quran, but also in the Torah. Remember, these religions are the same. These religions are the same. It's other factors, political, power factors, and just the devil, it's the Iblis that has divided us into various religions, into various sects. Our religion is one. Our Creator is one. We all worship and love and glorify and praise our Creator. And doesn't matter if you follow Torah, your Quran is one. There's only one religion. And you can see it from here. Okay, so let's go back to this verse. Then it says, فَمَنْ تَعَجَّلَ. So remember Allah in enumerated number of days. We just showed it to you. I just showed it to you. It was 3 days of Hajj. فَمَنْ تَعَجَّلَ فِي يَوْمَيْنِ فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ. Basically, it says, then whoever hasten his departure in 2 days. So the minimum that you can be Allah's guest is that, okay, if you're in a rush, your wife might be sick, you have a sick child, your parents are sick, and you have to leave quickly, the minimum that you can stay in Allah's house as a guest, as his guest, is 2 days. So ideally, how many days? 3 days. 3 days is the standard. But Allah says it's okay if you want to rush it in 2 days. I accept that from you as my guest. But Allah is a gracious host. So when you go there, food is free, everything is free, and Allah is the most gracious host that you could expect. Because of that, He says, whoever delays, there is no sin upon. So basically, there's no until the third. This is just addition. وَمَنْ تَأَخَّرَ فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ. If you want to stay longer, that's fine. Because you are Allah's guest. And that's how a good host does. You don't kick your guests out, right? So basically 3 days, but you can rush it in 2 days. So Brother Williams, I hope you learned from this video. And this is again one of those things that is the first you hear from this channel. Nobody, you can Google this, nobody in this world, as far as I know, no one in this world knows about this. They have been bickering and arguing over these two verses for centuries. And they could not understand why, because they didn't know the number of days of Hajj. They didn't know about Kadesh, about Ghods, about Petra. And they sure didn't know about the number of days in Hajj in the Quran. The current Muslims, the Sunni Umayyad Muslims don't know about it. Look at their Hajj. They go to the deserts of Saudi Arabia, where there was never a city of Mecca. You can look at all the maps, ancient maps. There was nothing over there. And they do Hajj for 5 days, 6 days. They don't even understand the verses of Hajj. They have created a temple to the idols, to their pagan idols. They worship Allah's private parts. Not Allah. I'm talking about Allah, the idol, the ancient Arab idol, which was named also Mitra, had several names. And then they worship the obelisk, which is symbolic of male private part. They worship stones over there. وَهُمْ فِي أَمْرٍ مَرِيجٍ. They're confused. Iblis has deceived them. They don't understand anything. Look at their Hajj. They don't understand the Quran. Allah has blinded their hearts. They have eyes, but they don't see. They have ears, but they don't hear. They have hearts and minds, but they don't comprehend. They don't understand. أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ. They're just like the livestock, but even worse. Much worse than the livestock. That's their situation. So I'm making these videos to wake you up. Nobody in this world, as far as I know, has talked about this. No one knows about this. This is the first you hear from this channel, like so many other things, like the true divine calendar of Allah, according to the Quran. Even the Jewish original calendar. Even the Jews still, the Jewish scholars don't know that. Because Allah teaches whoever He wants. It doesn't matter if you go to 200 years of schooling. Until Allah opens your heart and opens your mind, you're not going to understand. I see brothers who watch my channel. They see these things, they hear these things, but they don't understand. They come ignorant to this channel and they leave even more ignorant after watching the videos. It's because up until Allah wants to open your heart, you're not allowed to believe. So I hope this is clear for you what Moses is talking about. Moses is not talking about the journey to the wilderness of Zin, the journey to Kadesh or Petra. Moses is not talking about that. Moses is telling Pharaoh, let us leave so we can do our Hajj, which is what? A 3-day custom. It's a 3-day practice. And obviously you can see when Moses is telling us that there was sacrifices back then. They would go and offer sacrifices over there in the house of God, in the house of Allah, in Beth Elohim, which means Baytullah, Beth Elohim, house of Allah, house of our Creator. It's a house. I'm going to show, inshallah, make a video for you about the house because I think you will enjoy that. Okay, peace and blessings to all of you.